Imagine your life as a ladder, like the absolute highest rung you think you can possibly reach. Peak human logic, rationality, careful long-term planning.
Right.
Well, what if that's actually just the halfway point? Like everything you consider to be the pinnacle of smart decision-making might just be the baseline.
Which is pretty wild to think about.
It really is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Whether you are commuting or prepping for a high-stakes meeting or just intensely curious, the ideas we are unpacking today are going to fundamentally challenge the very mechanics of how you make choices.
Totally. It's a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah. So we are exploring this fascinating, honestly kind of radical 2023 essay by an author named Su Feng. It's titled The Thinking Style and Approach to Action in Spiritual Thinking.
And it's just such a rich text.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore this profound philosophical boundary line that the author draws. It's the dividing line between what he calls human or rational thinking and celestial or spiritual thinking. And, we're going to figure out how this applies to the very real way you live your life.
Because it's a framework that completely upends our modern assumptions about intelligence, right? Like, we are taught that the ultimate problem-solving tools are logic and meticulous planning.
Oh, absolutely. Spreadsheets, blueprints, pros and cons lists.
Exactly. But this essay introduces this concept of the ladder of thinking, and it explicitly breaks down the rungs.
Yeah.
So on the lower half, the rational human side, you have material thinking, image thinking, associative thinking, and elusive thinking.
Okay, let's actually ground those terms so we aren't just, throwing around heavy philosophy. Material thinking is basically what?
It's relying entirely on what you can touch and measure. Seeing is believing.
Right.
And then image and associative thinking are about mechanically linking your past experiences to solve the immediate problem right in front of you.
Okay. And elusive thinking.
That's essentially the ego. It's our human tendency to project our own anxieties and desires onto reality.
Got it. So then the essay crosses the boundary into the upper half of the ladder, the celestial side. And these rungs are visualized thinking, taiji thinking, non-form thinking, and holographic thinking, which sounds super abstract.
It does. So, okay, let's unpack this, because to make sense of these concepts, we really have to look at what they actually do. Like, taiji thinking is about sensing the interconnected balance of everything, right? Yin and yang.
Yeah, exactly. And non-form is seeing beyond just physical shapes.
Right. And then holographic thinking is the massive one. It's the ability to see how a single tiny part contains the blueprint of the entire universe.
Right, which is huge.
It is. Think of rational thinking like navigating a massive, incredibly complex maze. When you're operating rationally, you are on the ground staring at the brick walls right in front of your nose, just trying to figure out your next left turn.
Exactly. You're calculating it, you're terrified of dead ends, entirely focused on just surviving the maze. But spiritual thinking, this celestial side, is like suddenly floating 50 feet above the maze.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You aren't worried about the wall in front of you anymore because you can see the entire design. You can just walk with absolute purpose.
And if floating above the maze gives you that perfect, comprehensive view, well, it completely alters what you care about.
Yeah, you're no longer frantically hoarding keys or panicking about the next corner.
Exactly. Which brings us to a massive shift in our daily priorities. Like, why do we prioritize what we do? What's fascinating here, if you look at the rational mind stuck inside the maze, it is entirely consumed by the mechanics of existing.
Just baseline survival.
Right. It focuses strictly on survival and ego. The daily calculus is all about food, clothing, shelter, and transportation.
Just getting by.
Yeah, and avoiding the inevitable, like aging, illness, and death. And then beyond physical survival, it's completely obsessed with social survival.
Like getting likes on a post, basically.
Yeah, or securing respect, maintaining dignity, striving to be admired. Every single associative thought is tethered to self-preservation.
Okay, I hear this, and a part of me is raising a massive red flag.
Oh.
I mean, I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who is thinking, wait a minute, isn't caring about food, shelter, and avoiding illness just basic human common sense?
Of course it is.
Right. So if you step over that boundary into celestial thinking, are you just supposed to stop caring if you have a roof over your head or food on the table? Because honestly, that sounds less like higher thinking and more like a recipe for absolute disaster.
It's the most natural objection in the world, and it is exactly how a rational mind, a mind tuned to survival, processes the concept.
Okay, so how does the text explain it?
Well, the text is not suggesting that spiritual thinkers just lay down in the dirt and refuse to seek shelter. It's about where your ultimate motivation originates.
The motivation.
Right. The rational thinker takes action in order to secure the roof and the food, usually out of a fear of deprivation. But the spiritual thinker, according to this framework, completely disregards those human survival metrics as their primary driving force.
So they don't do things just to survive.
Exactly. Their thinking aligns entirely with the will of what the essay calls the supreme life, the creator, and the broader principles of the Tao. It's about pleasing the greatest creator without asking, what's in it for me?
Wow, so taking the ego completely out of it.
Yes, they are focused on how to live rather than just how to survive.
That makes sense. But so if we take fear out of the driver's seat, what actually steers the car? Like if spiritual thinkers aren't making choices based on survival metrics, how are they making life-altering decisions?
That's where the essay introduces a really specific concept as the compass. It calls it the Holy Spirit.
And just to clarify for the listener, the text explicitly defines this not as a person, right? It's not a traditional religious figure sitting on a cloud.
No, not at all. It describes it as an inner voice. It's the greatest driving force in our hearts, and its defining characteristic is that it brings absolute joy and excitement.
Joy and excitement.
Right. It never brings pressure.
Yeah.
It never brings fear.
And that absence of fear is really the absolute litmus test here.
Yeah, because when a rational mind makes a decision, even a highly successful logical one, it's almost always accompanied by a heavy burden of risk assessment.
Oh, totally. The stress, the pressure, the late nights worrying.
Exactly. But the spiritual mind operates on the fuel of inner joy. The essay provides a really vivid example to illustrate this. It's the scenario of being called to the desert.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So imagine that inner voice, that pure driving force of joy, tells you to go live in the desert. The spiritual thinker feels that revelation, feels the deep joy of it, and goes instantly, without a single second of hesitation.
While the rational thinker completely panics.
Oh, totally.
They immediately pull out a notepad and start asking, where's the water source? Won't I die of thirst? What if a sandstorm buries my house? Like, are you completely insane?
Right. And let's ground this in an even more modern bureaucratic reality. The essay uses the example of applying for a visa to Canada.
Oh, visas. The ultimate rational nightmare.
Seriously, so imagine that same inner voice tells you it's time to move to Canada. The rational thinker instantly goes into administrative survival mode.
Right, they check their requirements.
Yeah, they see they need a massive bank deposit, a pristine history of monthly transactions, a perfect paper trail. And when they realize they don't meet those exact criteria, they immediately fold. They say, I don't qualify, and the journey is just aborted before it even starts.
Wow. And the spiritual thinker.
Meanwhile, the spiritual thinker in the exact same scenario completely ignores the requirements. They ignore the official website, they brush off the advice of friends telling them it's statistically impossible,
Okay.
and they just begin the application process immediately.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because to any rational person listening to this right now, applying for an international visa without checking the bank requirements or packing your bags to move to a waterless desert,
It sounds wild.
it sounds entirely reckless. It sounds impulsive, deeply irresponsible, and honestly delusional. It looks like a total lack of thinking rather than a higher form of it.
Which is fair. This raises an important question. We observe that behavior and immediately assume the spiritual thinker possesses a simplistic, naive mind. But the text offers a really counterintuitive defense.
Which is?
It states that spiritual thinkers actually have infinitely more complex minds than rational thinkers. They're operating in a higher dimension.
A higher dimension.
Yeah, the rational mind simply cannot comprehend the vast complexity of the spiritual thinker's mind, which is exactly why it looks like recklessness from the outside.
So they aren't just being lazy.
No, the spiritual thinker isn't ignoring the bureaucratic steps because they're foolish. They're ignoring those steps because they are operating on a completely different set of physics. They are tuned into a flow of events and a universal alignment that the rational mind, the guy staring at a spreadsheet, is completely blind to.
And the essay doesn't just ask us to take that on faith. It actually breaks down 3 distinct ways to prove that this spiritual thinking is infinitely more complex.
Yes, the 3 dimensions of higher complexity.
Let's walk through these, because this is where the paradigm really shifts.
Yeah.
The first dimension is the macroscopic versus the microscopic view. Think about hunting for a job.
Oh, the perfect example.
Right. When we use our rational brains to look for a job, We obsess over the microscopic details. What's the exact starting salary? Are the working conditions comfortable?
Do I get decent vacation days?
Exactly. We are aggressively analyzing the tiny immediate elements of our survival.
And the macroscopic view completely inverts that process. The spiritual thinker approaches the job hunt by asking, does this bring me deep, resonant joy?
Joy again.
Right. And more profoundly, does this conflict with my ultimate destination of reaching heaven or achieving my highest spiritual alignment?
Wow, that's a big question for a Tuesday job interview.
Yeah, they're looking at the entire trajectory of their existence across time, not just the next biweekly pay period.
While the rational thinker evaluates the job based on just current life needs.
Exactly, often sacrificing their ultimate well-being for immediate security. The spiritual thinker trusts that the microscopic needs, like the rent, the groceries, will naturally resolve themselves in alignment with that broader path.
That shift in scale connects directly to the second dimension of complexity, which is the difference between considering life with a capital L versus considering human life with a lowercase h.
That distinction is so important.
Yeah, to consider human life, the author says you basically just need to study accumulated human knowledge. You learn the arbitrary rules of society, you memorize how the stock market works, you figure out the tax code.
You learn the etiquette of a job interview.
Right. It's essentially just reading the instruction manual for the maze. But to consider capitalized life, a spiritual thinker is pondering the deepest mysteries and principles of existence and how life itself relates to the vastness of time and space.
Because studying the lowercase h just makes you a highly efficient rat inside the maze. Considering capital L life is what actually allows you to float above it.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
And that brings us to the third dimension, which is perhaps the most practical demonstration of this entire philosophy. Maximizing simplicity out of complexity.
Yes, I love this part.
The essay notes that rational thinkers consistently complicate simple things, while spiritual thinkers distill massive complexity into brilliant simplicity. The author actually shares a historical example from his own experience.
About building the community branches, right?
Yes, regarding the construction of the third and fourth branches of their community.
It's so striking. If you put a group of highly rational people in charge of building a new community from scratch, what happens? You have months of architectural blueprints.
Endless committee meetings.
Fierce debates over material selection, soil testing. It takes a year just to break ground.
Totally. But the author's spiritual approach bypassed all of that. He simply imagined the layout based on the natural terrain of the environment and just gave directions on the fly.
Which is wild. No one involved even knew what the final community was supposed to look like.
Right, but through sheer alignment and cooperation, they built two beautiful communities in just 2 years.
It's like the difference between a classical symphony orchestra and a master jazz ensemble. Like an orchestra of 50 musicians absolutely cannot play a single note without perfectly written sheet music, rigid structural roles, and a conductor.
They need all that structure.
Yeah. But a master jazz ensemble doesn't need sheet music. They just listen to the environment, they feel the rhythm of the other players, and they improvise a flawless, breathtaking 2-hour set just by flowing together.
And to push that jazz analogy further, to the person sitting in the audience who only understands classical sheet music.
The rational thinker.
Exactly. To them, the jazz band looks utterly chaotic. They look unprepared. But the level of listening, intuition, and complex real-time processing required to improvise beautifully is staggering.
It really is.
The text emphasizes that people who complicate simple things, the people demanding the endless blueprints and committees, are actually demonstrating less insight. The mind of someone who can absorb massive, overwhelming environmental complexity and distill it down into simple, direct, joyful action is operating on a much higher plane.
Wow.
Which is a direct challenge to the listener, right? Have you ever completely ruined a project by over-planning it? Have you ever analyzed a simple choice so thoroughly that you paralyze the actual execution?
Oh, I mean, I know my rational brain has definitely paralyzed me with microscopic details while completely losing sight of the macroscopic goal, but I'm still hung up on the physical reality of this.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Well, intuition and jazz ensembles are beautiful concepts, but my rational brain is screaming right now. What happens when lives are literally on the line? When we are dealing with physical safety, being meticulous and mathematically rational has to be superior.
You'd think so.
Yeah, you cannot jazz ensemble your way out of a collapsing roof. So what does this all mean when the stakes are physical survival?
Well, the text has a final, incredibly powerful counterexample to address this exact friction. It confronts this head-on with the scenario of building a house.
Okay.
It acknowledges that society mistakenly labels spiritual thinkers as superficial while praising rational thinkers as meticulous. So let's observe the rational thinker building a house.
They're probably incredibly thorough.
Very. They calculate the load-bearing walls using historical data, they select the strongest, most expensive materials, and they pour a deep, rigid foundation. Their goal is to ensure this house stands firm against the elements for at least 30 years.
Right. And on paper, this level of detailed consideration seems entirely correct, responsible, and safe.
But then you have the spiritual thinker looking at that exact same plot of land. And they say, don't bother with all that heavy material. Just build a simple house up on the high ground using some light wood and glass. It is totally fine if it only lasts for 2 or 3 years.
And to the rational thinker, this sounds dangerously lazy.
It sounds superficial.
But here is the massive twist the author reveals. The spiritual thinker knows that a catastrophic earthquake is going to hit that exact location in 2 years.
An earthquake so powerful that it will completely obliterate even the meticulously built 30-year house.
Exactly. Therefore, building the 30-year house isn't actually meticulous. It is a tragic, massive waste of financial, material, and human resources.
Wow.
The spiritual thinker suggests building casually because they possess a macroscopic foresight that the rational thinker completely lacks. And this isn't framed as a magical psychic power, by the way.
Right, it's not like seeing the future in a crystal ball. No, it's about being so attuned to the broader rhythms of nature, to the Tao, that they sense the impermanence of the environment. The rational mind is trapped in its linear projection, building for 30 years, based entirely on the past 30 years of historical data.
Right.
The spiritual mind is operating with a holistic awareness of what the environment is actually doing.
So what does this all mean? It's a profound irony, right? What the rational mind aggressively dismisses as superficial, reckless, or lazy planning is actually the byproduct of a much deeper, higher dimensional awareness.
Yeah.
The person building the fragile glass house isn't doing it because they are foolish. They are doing it because they are the only one who actually sees the horizon.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the entire essay, it perfectly encapsulates the thesis. Rational thinkers are entirely blind to the earthquakes of life. Their heads are down. They are focused on the microscopic rules of human society, the rigid bank requirements, the intricate blueprints, the 30-year building materials.
They are so incredibly busy surviving the maze that they cannot feel the walls of the maze shifting.
That's beautifully put. Spiritual thinkers are looking at the horizon. They are attuned to the macroscopic, to life with a capital L, and to that inner voice of joy that guides them safely around the disasters that the rational mind is busy over-engineering for.
It is a total paradigm shift. I mean, we started at the bottom of the ladder of thinking, realizing that rational, ego-driven thought is just the baseline of the human experience.
Right.
And we explored how rational thinking is anchored in the fear of what might go wrong, while spiritual thinking is anchored in living joyfully and aligning with a higher frequency.
We looked at how this higher dimensional thinking completely bypasses the paralyzing complexity of visas and blueprints, operating like a master improviser.
And finally, we arrived at the impending earthquake, revealing that true meticulousness requires seeing the entire system rather than just overbuilding for the present moment.
It really is a radical invitation to reevaluate the core driving forces in our own lives. The framework doesn't ask you to completely abandon your intellect, but it challenges you to recognize its severe limitations when it's untethered from a higher joyful purpose.
Exactly. So I want to bring this right back to you listening to us right now. Look at your own to-do list today. Look at the decisions you are wrestling with this week. Are you operating from a place of fear, pressure, and societal expectation?
Are you just frantically trying to survive the maze and look good to everyone else while doing it?
Or are you listening to that inner driving force of joy and excitement? Are you playing the long game, looking at the horizon, and focusing on how to truly live?
It requires a profound leap of faith to trust an inner voice of joy over the tangible, microscopic blueprints of society. But as this philosophical framework suggests, the reward is transcending the ordinary and stepping into a vastly more complex, beautiful way of existing.
And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a brand new thought experiment, something to really chew on that builds on everything we've just discussed. Oh, I love these.
Think about the world around us right now. If rational thinking, with all its meticulous, fear-based, ego-driven focus on survival, is the very engine that built all the physical infrastructure, the laws, the safety nets, and the institutions of human society.
Which it is.
Right. And if spiritual thinking transcends all of those microscopic rules, what would happen if the entire world suddenly woke up tomorrow as spiritual thinkers?
Oh, wow.
Would humanity instantly ascend into a peaceful, cooperative utopia driven by pure joy and environmental harmony? Or would our physical society completely collapse within weeks because no one is checking the blueprints, updating the server farms, or enforcing the visa requirements anymore?
That is a brilliant question.
It is a fascinating question about the ultimate balance of human evolution and the tension between surviving the maze and transcending it for you to mull over today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.